Hey everyone, this is Zevros for the Arcade Stick, and if you've been following Reddit fight sticks or other controller communities, you know two things are pretty popular. One is the rise of GP2040, and I'm all for it. We've seen so many exciting things develop for this project, whether it's improvements in the code or just new products using it, that I really love seeing all the innovation coming out. And number two is a perennial thread that keeps coming up. I want an all-button controller, but I don't have a lot of money, but I want it to be good. And a name has been coming up on those sorts of threads recently, Haute42. Now, in the past, I would have said, no, that's probably not going to be possible. You need to spend a little bit more money. However, Haute42, I think they wanted to prove me wrong that, no, we don't have to settle anymore. And they sent over 3 units to review. The first one being the T16. Now, there are different models in the T series. They sent me probably the most buttony one, and I'm all for it because I like gizmos and stuff like that. So having these extra buttons around is great. I'm never going to worry about being CPT legal, so not my problem. Anyway, if you're not worried about being CPT legal, you may be wondering, is the T16 for me? And I'm going to try and answer that in this review. However, maybe this guy is a little too big for your everyday daily driver. I want to be able to carry something really small. Well, we got you, because Haute42 also makes the G series, and this is the G16. So this is the middle child. As you can see, it has all the extra buttons. And of course, if you want one that is CPT compliant, which regular hitbox, I don't want anything fancy, they do have models for that. But maybe this is still just too big. You need something you can stuff in your pocket, maybe. Well, they also have the Haute Mini. And this is a little baby Mixbox style controller. Uses keyboard switches, and they all use GP2040, so you know they're going to perform well. And I'm going to be looking at all of these. And unlike in the past when I've had reviews where I kind of mix everything together, I'm going to separate them out. And that way you can watch whatever sections you're interested in. If you're only interested in the G16 or the Mini or the T16 by themselves, you can watch those sections. So hopefully that makes it a little bit more comfortable viewing experience for you. And hope you enjoy this review of these 3 products. All right, let's talk about the T16 and what you get with it. So of course you get the controller, but you also get it's an okay A to C cable, nothing to write home about, but again, at this price point, I understand. You do get the not great switch puller, and you do get a bonus switch. I really do appreciate that they include one of these just in case one isn't working on arrival or one goes out later. You do also get a sheet of little rubber feet, which are clear, so it's nice. Since you have an acrylic sandwich board, you want something clear. You also get little extra option button covers, and I swapped some of mine, so you'll see that. Okay, there's the accessories. You also get a full-size printed instruction sheet, which is super nice. I appreciate that this is included. All right, that's the accessories. Let's talk about the controller itself. So yeah, right away, this is a much bigger boy than the G16. And just for comparison, let's take a look. So you can see it feels like this is at least twice as big. Yeah, you could fit 2 G16s in the size of this thing. It's pretty large. And unfortunately, it doesn't fit any of my current tablet sleeves, the ones I'd like. But that's why there's bigger sleeves out there and I can deal with it. Anyhow, yes, this is an acrylic sandwich board, so you can get a little bit smeary with it, but with the white PCB underneath, I don't feel as bad. So there is that. Let's start up top with features. Turbo, as usual, it's hold it down, now it's on, and there it goes. And turn it off again by doing the same thing. So you can turbo any action button. I can't tell if you can turbo these. I'll talk about that in a minute. Can't turbo your movement buttons either. Sorry. Anyway, status panel, these are kind of a GP2040 special, and yeah, I can tell I'm in X input, turbo shots at 20, directional pad mode, and SOCD set for last win, because that's my favorite and I'm lazy. And also, of course, you can see what direction's being pressed. Now, currently, there is no support for the layout that's here. The train is working on a specialized firmware update for this so that it will show a layout just like you have here, which will be nice. Anyhow, USB-C connection up top. It's nice you can kind of see it and get a little status on it there if it's connected or not. I just have it plugged into a power brick, so it's probably going crazy trying to figure out what player am I, what's going on. You have standard touch, home, back, and start, and there you go for options, at least on top. So buttons here, you'll notice again on the G16 we're using the small 24 millimeter analog, not really though, these are even smaller. Whereas these are all pretty much would be the equivalent of 30 mil. Usually, I know on Hitbox, at least your movement here would be the smaller size buttons, but they just said, hey, why not make them all big? And there you go. That's the T16. It's something that does take a tiny bit of adjustment to if you've been playing on 24 mil. I usually do, but this doesn't feel bad. They are spaced a bit further apart because they are larger, but it feels pretty comfortable to play on. And this, because of the larger size, fits really nicely in the lap. For action button layout, it's almost Felix. It's kind of like it has a slight fall off kind. So I want to say it's in between Noir and Felix. So you have a bit of a slope. It's just something to note. Nothing that's going to really throw you off, I don't think. If you're used to Hitbox, it should be fairly similar. Now the extra buttons, if you're wondering, L3, L3, and R3. So yeah, you can map those macros in Street Fighter 6 or in Guilty Gear and have it do what you want. So it actually, I have not gotten the muscle memory quite yet. So if someone pulls a drive impact, you can just go boop and counter it. Riflemonger was right. Let's just say that. Now, one of the nice features here is you do have Mixbox. So these four kind of WASD configuration. If you are coming to all button controllers and you haven't used one before, I feel like having the option to use this is great. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I have WASD in my memory. I don't have quite thumb button to jump in my memory quite yet, right? Or there may be other games you want to play where it's just more intuitive to use this and not this. Shooters or what have you. So it makes it very versatile and very welcoming to the first-time player. All right. Yes, I do have a custom LED set up, and yes, the T16 supports LEDs, and we can just swap them. There we go. Have a little chase pattern, and yes, all of them light up. Now, currently with the current firmware, I'm pressing up, and that does that. We'll see more in the lab. So there is little things like that, but that's just because the firmware doesn't support it yet, and hopefully in the future it will. All right, let's go ahead and take a tour of the sides just to show you a little bit more functionality here. All right, let's start with the side closest to us. Nothing exciting here, and you can see it's an acrylic sandwich board. Nothing exciting here, but here we go. We do have USB-C. That's where you're going to connect, and you already kind of saw that. But here is where the PS5 compatibility magic happens. So if you have one of these guys, a Magic Boots 1.1 PS4, or Magic S Ultimate, or the Wingman FGC, those, and in the Magic Boots, it's probably your best option just to not have this giant thing sticking out. You plug that in, you set it to PS4 mode, and now you have PS4, PS5 compatibility, which is awesome. It's a great development in GP2040, and it's really nice to have that feature available on this controller. All right. So on the bottom, though, we do have, again, that kind of frosted acrylic. Pins are labeled, and I can read some of them, so that's nice, but not all. We do have, again, input modes listed, so that's a handy thing to know about. If I want to put this into PS4 mode, PS5 mode, I just need to hold Y while I plug it in. So let's go ahead and experiment with that, just to see if it's a lie. I can let it go about now. And there we go, PS5 mode, whereas I was in X input mode before. So that's a little handy shortcut. Obviously, it doesn't have every shortcut printed on there, even though it probably has the real estate too. I would just say, let's see if there's a thing you can download to your phone that just has all the shortcuts. I mean, I'm sure the website is, if nothing else, you can use. So there's that. Anyway, that's our overview of the T16. Let's move on. Let's review the dimensions on the T16. So, long ways, we're looking at just over 11.5 inches or about 295 millimeters. And vertically, we are about 7¾ inches or about 195-ish millimeters there. And thickness-wise, we are at, let's include the buttons, I'd say just shy of 3/4 of an inch, about 15 to 18 millimeters. That's kind of a rough measurement with the buttons there. So yeah, it is quite a bit bigger, as already shown. Just to take a look, this is a G-Form Extreme sleeve. My iPad Pro fits in it. And yeah, as you can see, this is not going to work here, unfortunately. So I'd have to upscale to a larger laptop sleeve if I want to hold this thing. Let's get a weight on the T16. So we put that down. Yeah, I knew this guy was a little bit hefty. It's, you know, nothing too extreme. 2 pounds, 1.1 ounces. So yeah, it's definitely a good weight. Feels good in the lap. Let's do a quick Steam Deck check on the T16. All right, so just moving around in the OS, yes, as usual, you can do it. No problem at all. I'm in PS5, PS4 mode, but it still works fine. I do recommend setting these into X input for better compatibility, though in my testing I really haven't seen too much of a difference. If you run into issues, though, I would say change it to X input and see if that improves your situation. Now, let's go ahead and load the game. And while that's loading, I want to do a quick dimensions check to see, you know, if you're in a really cramped environment, how much space do you need? So, looking back here, you need about 10.5 to 11 or so just to be comfortable. And then width-wise, you're about the same width as the Steam Deck, so you need a good 12 inches, 11.5 inches, thereabouts. So there's your dimensions. And let's go see if it works in-game. And as usual, GP2040, I always have full confidence it's going to work. And there you go. Now, I am using a right angle adapter to minimize the space I need between the T16 and the Steam Deck. If you don't have that, you may have to add 1.5 inches or so to the total depth you're going to need. But otherwise, yeah, it's, I mean, it's not the optimal traveling stick, but it does work. Let's take a look at the internals of the T16, starting with what's under these button caps. And I will be using gloves just because, especially when I start taking this apart, you don't want fingerprint smears because, you know, it's not fun trying to clean them out. Anyhow, just going to pop one of these button caps. They should have little grooves on them to get a screwdriver underneath. Really easy. Just make sure you don't, scratch your acrylic. And we're using the Chalk V2s as opposed to kind of the MX keys that are in the G16. And I kind of wish we kept that because there's just so fewer options for these kind, and I am trying my darndest with their included switch puller to get this out just so you can see it. It's almost coming. If you have a switch puller already, I recommend using it over this. This one is kind of difficult to work with. All right, let's just try. Yeah, I'm having better luck with the flathead. It's low profile switch, so these do feel thinner than the G16, but again, there's only 3 options you have for switches. What's included, the V2 browns, which are tactile and aren't that great, and the V2 blues, which are clicky. So the problem with low profile switches is they are all non-standard. If you have a PCB that uses one type, like this uses the V2s, you can't really use anything else, which is unfortunate. And I understand why they went with the V2s, because these keycaps are a little easier to source. If you feel like you want to change out for some of those stovetop swirl button caps that are out there, it's not too hard to do. You just go out to AliExpress and they sell a ton of them. Getting it slotted back in is always fun, because you don't want to, there we go, bend those metal tabs. If one gets bent out of shape and doesn't slot, then you're not going to have a good time. And just to replace, just line up the cross with the cross underneath and press it back down. There you go. So nothing too exciting there, but yeah, you can replace the switches if they ever get broken, which is very nice. I would think almost, at this price point, they'd be soldered in or something, but nope, we've got hot swap, so that's very nice. Let's turn it over to side 2 and start disassembling. Real quick, before we switch to side 2, actually, let's go ahead and ply off one of these option buttons. They are a bit more recessed, I feel, than the G16 or the Mini. And just replace it with that red don't touch light or color. Yeah, it's pretty easy, but I do feel like it's harder to get at, to remove them, so I just, again, use a little flathead, and that made it pretty simple. But again, don't scratch your acrylic doing it. Alright, let's get into the T16 proper. Now, again, I highly recommend, especially as you open this up, have some latex or other gloves that are going to keep you from laying your fingerprints and etc. all over the place. However, if you are opening up to clean, have some microfiber towels or lens wipes or something like that, and lens spray works pretty well. Just make sure it's clean and dry before you reassemble. So you might need to give it 5-10 minutes to fully dry, even after you towel it off. And in my case, cat hair, I don't have cats in this room, and the hair still somehow gets in here, so just be mindful of that. Alright, other things, I of course recommend you lay down a towel so you don't end up scratching your acrylic. And you're going to want a pH0 precision screwdriver to take these out. Now you can probably use a flathead here, but I just feel it's better to use the pH0. So there are 9 of these guys, and like a lot of acrylic sandwich board setups, it's got these little pin and screw setups. So there we go, and there are 9 of them, and of course I always recommend having a cup, dish, bowl, or a little box like this so that you can store them and not worry about dropping them on the floor or losing them. I'm going to lock that. So there we go. At least one side is. Alright, so on the bottom is this matte acrylic, so it's a little obscuring, and that's, that's fine. But it does kind of hide these pins, the pin labels. Anyway, so there's another label, or layer. Let's just place that there. So now we get to the main circuit board. While this is out, I am definitely going to take a picture of these pins, just for my future reference. For example, maybe I want, R3 or L3 here. This will be R because we're flipped, I know. And I want this pin 18 to be function instead of the second L3. So having this map printed on here is a very nice touch. And something I have noted on the G16 and the Mini as well is this boot button is actually accessible through the acrylic. You just need a unfolded paper clip or something like that, something thin that'll just press it and you plug it in, and now you're in boot mode. You can flash nuke it if you have to, if you've really borked things up, you didn't define a start pin or something like that. So at least there is a way to recover, and you don't have to disassemble this. The main reason you're going to be disassembling this, I feel, is just adding art, and hopefully you don't have to do it again. Alright, so we have a little feed through for our screen. The RP2040 chip is embedded there. USB-C's there. Let's go ahead and apply this up. So now we have your big, this is a thicker acrylic here. The other two sheets are a little thin, but I'm not too worried. There's nothing really too thin that you're going to have a threat of breaking, mostly, but I would, of course, be careful. This layer here is kind of holding in the key switches. So I'm not going to apply it off, because that would mean I have to apply off everything here, and that's more trouble than it's worth, and it's not really going to show you anything. Again, this is where you want to apply your artwork on top of, though. So you probably will need to remove all the caps and then lay down the artwork file that you've had printed and cut, and then put this guy back on top of it. So let's go ahead and start reassembling, since we're not really discovering anything you can't already see with everything back on. Actually, let's flip that, and just to make sure, we get a quick wipe down. Now this is the thickest acrylic in the setup up top, so I'm not too worried about cracking it, but still not going to roughhouse it or anything. Just want to make sure there's no cat hair that gets in here, because, man, I don't have cats in this room. I don't let them in, and yet I get stuff in. And you never know if my hair falls in there, so just try to be mindful. You may, if you have an air blaster of some kind, it might be a good time to break that out and make sure nothing solid's in there. I think just these are little scratches I may have accumulated, so that's my fault. Let's flip it over and just start replacing the other two acrylic sheets. So this, with all the squares, it matches only one way. Now this, though, tends to flip one way or the other, and you need to line it up on this boot button. So there does seem to be a subtle difference. And you can kind of see I am lined up, and it's not where it well, it kind of is where it should be. Let me flip it over to see if I'm screwing up. Yeah, that looks better. Alright, so I'm just going to make sure these are clean before I rebolt these. So with that, I can break out my pins. And because these slide in and out, I recommend doing them one at a time. And start, as always, work in a cross formation. So start with one corner, go down the other corner, and don't tighten until you've gotten them all locked in. Come up here, go up here, 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 here. It's a good sample pattern to use. That'll just prevent you from, you do all one side and then somehow these are not lined up and you're having real struggles to get them. And if you leave them loose, you'll have a little bit of play to make sure they all go in. But yeah, there we go. So just to show you, you won't see this pop all the way through when you're reassembling, but don't panic, it's okay. Just gonna screw that in a little bit. And you'll need to hold it from the underside, otherwise it tends to rotate on its own, and it might be a little finicky about getting in there. So let me set this to not rotate. Just try to work with it, have some patience. Don't run it, don't try and, if it's not threading, don't fight it. That you can cross thread your bolt, and I don't want to know what it takes to replace one of these. There we go. See, patience pays off. All right, and again, I probably tighten it a little bit more than I should. Leave it a little bit loose so you can work on the others and then go for a round of tightening down. And with acrylic, never tighten down all the way, as hard as you can, because it will eventually crack, and we don't want that. That'll ruin your day. So that said, that's pretty much the internals of the T16. We have the T16 in the lab now, so let's do some basic acceptance stuff. First of all, I just want to do a quick flexion test to see, do I get any warping or bending or anything like that when I'm pressing down? And no. Even when I press over the screen, it holds up, so that's pretty surprising. Okay, so passes that test really nicely. All right, let's do a slide test. I can hear and feel the screws on the underside kind of digging into my foam. So yeah, on a bare surface, this is going to slide around. Oh yeah, you can hear those kind of grinding against. So if you have an expensive surface, don't use this just without the little rubber nubs. I'm going to put those on. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and now I applied the rubber nubs just to show you. I only used 6 out of the 10. That should be sufficient. So anyway, let's do a quick slide test on the foam. Yeah, it's dramatically down. So these are working pretty nicely for OEM little rubber nubs. And yeah, even on the desktop, or especially the desktop, the sliding is much reduced. So that's nice. I've definitely put some of these on ASAP just because you don't want to scratch up, your desktop surfaces, especially if you're playing on there. If you're lap playing, sure, that's not going to bother you, but yeah. If you decide to go with something like grip tape instead, you're going to need something that's thick enough to overcome the height of the screws, so just be mindful of that. All right, let's move on to actually pressing some buttons. All right, it's about time to get into testing the basic buttons and stuff like that, but before I do, I want to answer a question that comes up a lot, or seems to anyway, is can I get aftermarket keycaps for the T16? As you can see, yes you can. There's 2 styles out there on AliExpress. If you look up like arcade replacement button tops or something like that, hitbox replacement buttons, you probably find these little caps that look like this. I call them stove tops just because there's that big spiral in the middle. And yeah, they come in 2 different sizes, 25mm, 20mm, and for the T series, you're going to want these 25mm ones. They're all large buttons. There's also another style out there. You can see it here. This is the gamer finger. Now this is an OEM gamer finger, but they are selling just replacement gamer finger caps, and this does not really work on the T16 and the upcoming M series. So you can see that I can press it, yeah, but it's really wobbly in comparison to this. It has almost no wobble, so I don't recommend them for this. They can work on the G series, but here I don't recommend them at all. This just sits much more flush, and I think there is a very negligible height difference where these sit just a tiny bit lower, but it's not really anything noticeable during play. What is noticeable is that the replacements have a nice little matte texture to them versus the really smoother stock caps. Now that's fine. I just wanted something to differentiate my movement buttons, so there we are. In summary, if you're looking to get replacement caps, different colors or whatnot, look for the low profile ones, not the gamer finger style. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and mash some buttons. So let's go ahead and see how our directionals look. Now once again, that we don't have this up mapped on the status screen or that it doesn't light up, we know why. It's not supported in the current firmware, but I know the train is working on a new revision, and soon there should be Haute-specific firmwares. So be on the lookout for that. All right, everything here looks good. I don't know how fast I could tap out a 360 on here. I've never been very good at a hitbox. Anyway, let's try out some action buttons. So in the tappities.
Okay, that makes sense. Yep, perfectly responsive, very quick, very nice. Let's try turbo. All right. So you can get both reassurance from the little status screen and the LED itself that it's firing off. Touch is probably not going to do anything, but it does light up the up arrow. So that's just something that's, when you're mapping things and you want this to light up somehow, map it to touch right now. I think that'll be fixed again in future firmwares. I would do home, but that's going to call up big picture, and I don't want to do that. But I do know it works, so I just want to show you that back and start worked just fine. So we're all good there. L3, and again, it's kind of weird. If I hit home, this will light up, but otherwise, yeah. Okay, so everything passes here. Let's move along to actual games.
All right, let's just do a little bit of training mode to show off the T16 in game. So Honda's nice because he has a mix of charge moves and motion moves, and yeah, they come out right away unless it's me screwing it up. So just getting that Ocho throw, everybody's favorite headbutt. All right. All right, that all feels really good. As you can see, I've already mapped the R3 here, so it's at a moment's notice I can throw out that drive impact. And I mapped L3 onto drive parry. Boop. So, you know, not too bad. The low profile has a different feel, I think, than the other little slightly higher profile G16, and yeah, it feels pretty good. Like if you go across, I can definitely feel the buttons, but it doesn't feel like it's going to pull everything off, or it doesn't slow me down. If I do a fan, just a mash, I don't notice it at all, really. So, yeah. So low profile, I feel, is more suited to people that really do want to slide more. If you're more of a, you know, just that kind of person, then you should be fine with either, really. All right, and again, I'm using last win. You can tell it says SOCDL, and that's probably in very tiny font on the video here, but okay. Alright, I think you know the end of that. Anyhow, yeah, feels really good in game. I think I'll just have to get used to using the shortcuts here. Now, as far as, again, tournament issues, I'll be talking about that later, so just stay tuned for that. But overall, pretty happy with the T16. All right, I want to do a quick web audit on the T16. You know, how easy is it to find its home page, get support, etc. Let's hit it up in DuckDuckGo on a private browser, just so you know we're not getting influenced by the algorithm. And it's the second result, which is pretty good. So let's click into that. Generally, if it's within the first 5 results, I give it a pass. So being number 2, pretty good. A minus. All right, T series. Round button pad, well, yeah. Again, the input latency sub 1 ms. I think it only applies to certain situations, like PCs with USB set a certain way. So there's that, but technically it is true in that situation. All right, that's true. It has all that stuff. Okay. Now I don't know. I mean, usually when we do these gamer switches, is it really going to be that much better response? Maybe 1 out of every 100 times, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to gripe about that. So just more product shots. They look, you know, nicely done. All right, so I do like the button layout, especially, here's the 16. You notice it gives you the pins for these two, so you can remap them as you see fit. Do wish they
maybe the pins for other stuff was listed. That'd be nice. Does list PlayStation 4 compatibility. I don't know if that means it's out of the box compatible, because you do have to either add the files or the Magic Boots adapter to do that. So I would have an asterisk here or something, maybe. I don't know. Not too big of a deal. I think most people know GP2040 will support it with the right setup. So that's good. Yeah, it's pretty good. Let's go to support just to see how this is. I do like the first thing is firmware update, because lots of people want to update their GP2040 software. And here's the kind of short form of how to do it. It would be nice to have a video, but I'm not going to complain. And a big how to avoid the 8-minute timeout tutorial. That's great. So you can, here's how to set up with some links to resources that'll help you do it, because they can't do it themselves. Many such legal reasons, I'm sure. And then some FAQs. This is all good stuff. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with the web audit here. Don't really have too many real big complaints to make.
Now that we're back from the lab, let's talk about what I liked, some observations, mids, and what I think we can really improve upon on the T16. Now, the first thing I want to mention is the build quality. It feels overall pretty good. There is one thing I want to mention later, but it's again another one of these acrylic sandwich board designs, and those usually feel pretty nice. They have a good weight to them. They feel pretty solid, so that's it works. It's a survival strategy. It keeps going. So there you go. I do like that. We have enough option buttons. 4 over here, 1 here for turbo, and of course your R3 and L3 are there. So there's that. But overall, I'm not bending it. I can't flex it. Feels great. So the build quality, I feel, is overall very good. Next up in the list of things I liked about this is just the overall feature set. Yes, you have the screen, you have the LEDs, I have option buttons, which is nice. A lot of controllers end up only having 4. Yes, there's 4 here, but you end up having R3, L3 there, and turbo, which is always useful when you want to pound out those combos and cheat. Now I'm kind of just playing shooters that just aren't forgiving, make you want to mash the button a million times. Anyhow, otherwise, having the USB pass-through for plugging in the Magic Boots, that's a huge add-on that I don't feel a lot of other controllers have. Yes, I'll be reviewing some that do, so that's nice, but a lot of those, like listed out in AliExpress, don't feature that yet. So having that option is going to extend the life of this controller, I feel. Anyhow, all those features put together, I feel, is a really great package for you, and that's using GP2040, which keeps evolving. It only leaves me with more things to look forward to, and yes, they are working on having a customized firmware for not only the T16 but the G16, so the display looks correct, and you'll get all the proper lighting, etc. Next on the list of things I liked about the T16 is customization options. Now, there's nothing really dramatic, but it's available, whereas some sticks we review just don't have that at all. So the first thing you can do is, if you don't like just the clear caps, you want some kind of translucent black, smoke color, or pink, purple, red, blue, green, yellow, etc. You can get those, but they're not from Haute42. They're all available on a couple different sellers over on AliExpress. I refer to them as the stovetop buttons because they've got little spirals in them like, old school stovetops do. So there is that. Now, also, there is an artwork template you can use to print out. You'll have to cut it yourself, unfortunately. And for some reason, this is only available, at least I've only seen it on the Haute42 Discord, as of this recording anyway. So hopefully they'll be posting that to the Haute42 website soon, so you can just download it from there, not have to sign up for another account or what have you. I'm sure most of you who are looking at these controllers have a Discord account, but just in case you don't want to do it, having it on the website is nice. What else? Well, I didn't say this about the G16, but I will about the T16. There's just so much more real estate to put stickers here, and the smooth acrylic is perfect for them. So yeah, if you are a sticker maniac, you can just lay it out, put those stickers down, and you're off to the races. So if you like stickers, this probably is a big controller for you, and it has enough space. All right, I've gushed about the T16 long enough. I just want to make some neutral observations that, not quite pro, not quite con, just something to think about when you're evaluating if this controller is for you. So first of all, it's the size. This guy, again, let's compare the G16. It's a big boy, and it unfortunately does not fit even the 10, 11-inch tablet sleeves that I have. So I'm getting something bigger, but it would be nice if there was kind of something out there that was more custom for it, maybe. I don't know. Also, when it comes to sizes, this will fit people with larger hands, whereas the G16, if you have small hands like me, the G16 is great. And the T16 for me, especially since we're using the large size caps, are basically emulating 30 mils all around. It does feel like there's an adjustment period. I'm used to playing on Shio Kenstar, which is 30 mil for action buttons on my main boxes, and this has that, so it's kind of nice. But getting used to these being large is a little bit different. So it's kind of weird they just went all 30. Maybe that was just a design choice. When these four at least would be small size. I'm guessing if you wanted to and you don't mind the gap, you could just mount the small size caps on there and they would work. So if you still feel like I want small size caps, sure, but you're still going to have the same spacing. So what are you gaining, right? So just some notes on the size difference. The nice thing is, again, if you have bigger hands, it works better. But it also plays a lot better, like I mentioned, in the lap than the G16 might. It's just more comfortable. I don't have to worry about squeezing my legs together all the time. So that's definitely a nice perk. Another sort of neutral observation, and it's just a fact of life for any acrylic really, is that it picks up smudges, as usual. I've stopped putting that in cons, just it's kind of a fact of life. I don't think there's anything out there that can stop it. However, since there is a white underlayer by default, these are somewhat less visible, I feel. And again, clean it with your trusty microfiber towel. And if you really have bad smudges, just add a little lens cleaner to that towel. I wouldn't spray the unit itself, just so you don't get lens cleaner inside your switch and ruin your day. But, there you go. Something you might be concerned about if you really like low profile buttons, where you don't have a lot of height above where the button is. The T16, it's not as severe as the G16, and I'll compare that in a second just to show you. There is, a little bit of still height above that. That's, would be versus a Sanwa or something like that. It's definitely different. But just to compare to the G16, this is dramatically higher. Now, I didn't feel like it really affected my gameplay. I could still mash pretty well just with using a flat palm. Or just doing this if I want to. So I didn't feel like it impacted my style gameplay, but if you, again, are someone that relies on really low profile buttons, then this might not be the controller for you. Next on the not quite pros, not quite cons, is the choice to use Chalk V2 switches. Now, these are low profile switches, and yeah, it kind of, like I showed you with the button cap heights, reduces the overall height there and reduces the thickness of the unit, but it comes at a customization cost, right? With the G16, you can swap to any MX compatible switch just about. And there are, it feels like tens of thousands of them out there, past and present. So finding one that's really for you shouldn't be a big deal. You just probably want one with a proper light pipe. That way you can funnel that LED through it. But in the case of the Chalk V2s, you just don't have that option. It's pretty much, there's 3 options for Chalk V2s. We've got one clicky, we've got one linear, we've got one tactile, and the tactile one is allegedly not that good. So I'm a little disappointed in that. I understand why it's done, to save the height, and there you go. And I understand why Chalk V1s weren't used, because they're not compatible with these keycaps. So there's always that trade-off too. And this is more a critique of that industry, because every low-profile switch by every manufacturer uses a different standard. And even like the Chalk V1 versus Chalk V2, those are different too. So they're not necessarily compatible. That's a rant for another time. But if you're comfortable with the Chalk V2s, this is just fine. And I'm fine with it. I might get some blues later, just make them clicky and make them annoying to everyone around me. Give me that nice crunchy feedback. Otherwise, the linears here have been fine. It's just I was spoiled by the G16, the ability to customize there. That's all. All right, another one of my mids is, once again, I'd like to see the ability to accessorize. So making an option for a, say, bundle available that includes, say, an upgraded USB cable, a travel pouch, a Magic Boots adapter, that sort of thing. I think it would just make better sense and maybe make you guys a little extra money. So it's always nice to be able to just go, yeah, I'll just get that, and now I'm equipped to carry this around a little bit more securely and safely, have a better cable, and have a Magic Boots available so that I have right out of the box PS5 compatibility. So it's just something to think about. Okay, I've told you all the things I liked and some things to watch out for. Well, now I've got to get into what am I going to complain about? What can we do better? And there's actually not a whole lot. I mean, yeah, I'm going to complain that my existing tablet sleeves that I really like don't fit, but boo-hoo, this is a bigger controller, so I just have to face the facts and get another one. What are some real things that I didn't like? There's only really minor ones, so I'll go over them just to be complete. However, in the grand scope of things, I don't feel like they're too major to be worried about. So the first thing is the included accessories, at least a couple of them. The switch puller, it's not that great. I mean, it did work a little better with these switches versus some of the other ones in the, say, G16 and the Mini. However, it's still not great. So I would plan on ordering something that's a little bit better. I mean, this came with just a set of keycaps, switches, or whatever, and it works fine. A little bit better feeling than the little dinky metal one. Also, the included USB cable, not great. I would definitely consider ordering a different one of those as well. I mean, the little rubber feet are fine. I'm probably in the end going to put grip tape on it because it's just way bigger surface area, more aggressive about controlling sliding, and I can squeeze it and get that positive response. So I'm going to be using cat tongue grip tape for that, for what it's worth. So yeah, they include accessories. I'm glad we get them, and for the price, they're okay, but not terrifically great. All right, yet another minor gripe and something that can be fixed by applying your own artwork. It's not as severe as in the G16 where we had, mislabeled switches up here. But you'll notice the little silver rings around at least the hitbox buttons. Yeah, they're not here, here, or here, or here. So that's just kind of a minor little oversight that could be corrected by updating that PCB. Either just remove those entirely, or go ahead and stick them on all the buttons. Okay, I complained about this on the G16, and the T16 repeats the same, I don't want to say mistake, but yeah. Trying to read the pin text on here is close to impossible. Like up here, I can kind of make it out. And with my readers, I have a better chance. But if I wanted to know what pin this extra L3 button is, without removing this panel, good luck. So again, I suggest, when you do disassemble this, wear those gloves and maybe take it apart at least once, just so you can snap some pictures of what the pin layout is. Otherwise, it's just a small annoyance. It's nothing major. One little thing I was disappointed in was, the G16 has this side USB and top USB, whereas the T16 only has the top USB. I was kind of wanting to have a side USB, just so I can use a right angle adapter and it's more in line. It's a minor thing again, but I'm going to gripe about things, and there you go. The other thing that's missing on the T16 is this little slider switch, which alters, I believe, what this guy does. Not that I plan on using it that much, but I like having the option. So why did that disappear here? We'll never know. Alright, it's time to wrap things up with my usual 2 questions. Who is this for and who is it not for? And also give you some final TLDR thoughts. Let's start on the sort of quote-unquote negative for who this is not for, and I feel like the audience for the T16, there's just a lot of people this will appeal to. Really, the only big segment I think this will not work for is those of you that need a smaller controller, you have smaller hands, so a larger form factor is not for you, or you need something more portable, that's all. That's the really big segment that I feel will not gravitate towards the T16. But otherwise, this has just so many things going for it that it's hard not to recommend. So even if you're not thinking about it, you probably put it on your list anyway. The only other group of people I think the T16 may not appeal to are those of you who absolutely need to be able to change the key switches in here to any number of MX form factor switches. Yeah, you don't have that here, and I've already talked about it, so there's that. Though, how big of an impact that makes is really going to be up to you. I don't feel it's necessarily that big a drawback. Yeah, there are fewer options, but the options that are there are fine. I'm not sure how well they affect gameplay all that much, so there's that. Alright, so I've gone over some kind of edge cases where folks may not like the T16 versus some other options out there, but all in all, I feel like this is a really great overall controller. First, I want to talk about, is this for beginners? And it can be kind of intimidating with 16 buttons on here at first, but really, I feel like it's actually really great for beginners because you have the option for WASD right here, and I already talked about it, so I won't belabor it too much. While you're learning hitbox, maybe you sneak up and hit that other up button because you're just not feeling it quite yet. The muscle memory isn't in the thumb. I understand. Or, you want to play other games with it. That's perfect for that, so you don't have to buy another controller. You can have it all in one. And for advanced users, now you have R3 and L3 readily available for in-game, hotkeys. That way, once again, you map that drive impact, you map that faultless defense, whatever it is you want, and you're set to go. And it's just within thumb's reach. It's very quick. It's very easy. It is markedly better than trying to reach over from, over here to over there. It just works better for me, especially when I have small hands. So there is that. What can I say? I really like the T16. I've kind of given them already, but what are my final TLDR thoughts about the T16? I love the innovation. I love the combination of features. I'm kind of that gadget head that likes to see, it has 27 things in one, 32 things in one. Well, the T16 is kind of delivering on that promise with the extra buttons, LEDs, use of GP2040, the status screen, all that stuff. Also, the pass-through port is fantastic now that GP2040 has recently added Xbox support, so that's really cool for those of you who are on that platform and want to play Street Fighter 6 there, etc. Now you just need that Magic Boots adapter. So it's really an overall great package. It's hard to beat. The only thing is, of course, if you need something smaller to travel with, this is still very thin, but it might be still a little too Yeah, wide. So there is that. But otherwise, I think it's a great buy. All right, it's overview time for the G16. I'm excited. Let's take a look. So first of all, accessories. Just like all the other Haute42 products, you are getting a printed instruction manual, which is helpful for remembering the shortcuts, etc., looking at the layout and things like that. I always like having printed documentation handy. You also get a spare replacement switch. This is, again, Leopold Silvers. They like these for their MX compatible products. So it's nice. It's a really nice touch. I like it. You do get a sheet of rubber feet. They're like 10 in all. You do get little tiny option button caps. Now, I've already changed mine on this configuration, so I have the little clear ones, but you do get a red one and a black one. And I'm about to drop everything. Bloopers aside, you also get, it's an okay USB-C to USB-A cable. I'm not really using it, but at the price point, I don't expect a big braided 3.2, 40 gig, whatever cable. You do get a switch puller. It's not great, and I'll talk about that later. So there's your accessories. Let's talk about the main controller itself. Let's look down here at the G16, and as you can see, it has a lot of buttons. So yeah, if you're looking at this online and was wondering, what does this do? Is this legal? Is all that? We'll be addressing that in this review, so don't worry. Now I do have it connected to power, so you can see, yes, it lights up, and you have the status screen going there. And yes, I know there's extra movement options here, and they don't really show right now. Now the train has said that there is a custom firmware for both the G16 and the T16, so the screen here will absolutely appear the way it looks here in a future revision. So as of this recording, it's not quite out yet. I think it was in testing. I didn't feel brave enough, so there's that. Anyhow, that aside, let's go over some features, etc. here. Already, if you've noticed the layout, but I want to go through options first. We do have turbo, and it's pretty much what you expect. Hold it down, press a button, and there you go. And you're getting two flashes, both from the LED and from the status panel. Turn off, just hold the button, press it again, let go, and now it's off. All right, and you can, if you look very closely, I have turbo shot rate set to 17, so that's 17 shots a second, which is a nice feature of this status screen, is it shows you, okay, I'm in X input mode. I have turbo set to 17 when I use it on something. D, directional pad emulation right now. You have to do a hotkey to change it, but whatever. And my favorite, SOCD mode, last one, so SOCD-L. If you see N, it's neutral. Up is kind of the standard one, where up will beat it all the time, but down won't. Whereas I can do up and then win with down. All right, so what are these extra buttons here? So not only do you get the hitbox layout right here, but you do have the mixbox layout, which I feel is really advantageous for those of you who are coming over to an all-button controller and you're not sure about it. So while you're trying to learn, up is here, you can still do a cheat and hit up here, which is really nice. Or maybe you are a mixbox fan and you just want to use that. That's totally fine. You can reassign any button in GP2040, which is super nice. These extra buttons here, by default, you have LS, or L3, and R3. So it's kind of that Rufelmonger feature where you assign this to, say, drive impact, and you're doing your thing, you see them trying to drive impact, boom, that's it. So it's actually, I was kind of like, is that really useful? And it's just right there. It's just training yourself to use it. Now that we've covered the top, let's do a quick look at just a size comparison with the Mini, just to get some context of how small or large this is. Now this is already pretty small. If you can see my hand, even though it's pretty small, covers it. So yeah, this is really portable. Nice thing is I had this little 7-inch tablet sleeve, and it nestles in perfectly. Doesn't really leave a lot of room for a cable. I can mash it up top, but you know, it really protects it well. So I like that a lot. Anyhow, let's go around the sides. So first, up top here, we do have the first USB-C connection. And we have a second one over here, so that's kind of nice. Don't connect both of them at once, of course. But if you have a right angle adapter or a right angle cable, you can use it here. This little switch toggles what pin this uses. I'm not quite sure what the reasoning is for. I think I'll have to test it out more in the lab. Anyhow, on the other side, we have a pass-through port. So if you have one of these, little Magic Boots 1.1 for the PS4, or Magic S Ultimate, or a Wingman FGC, all you do for PS5 compatibility, plug this in, and let's connect our USB. You can hold this if you don't have it set into PS5 mode while you plug it in, and there you go. Should be in PS5 mode as long as you have that add-on enabled in web config. I'll show you a little bit how to do it. There you go. Now you have PS5 compatibility with GP2040. That's super nice. All right, let's unplug. And one more side is the back side. Now, there is this kind of frosted acrylic, so it makes it hard for me, at least, to read what these pins are. So if you need to reconfigure something, I recommend, and we'll do this in internals, you know, take this layer off, you'll be able to read them, take a photo, and save it for later. But it does list the input modes, so if you're not sure, hey, what do I do to use this on PS4? You hold Y. Keyboard, RT, and so on. Also, there is this nice feature that Haute42 regularly does, is have a pinhole, so you can get into boot cell mode. Just hold that, plug it in, and you're ready to put in new firmware or flash nuke it if you've really screwed things up. So that's a nice touch, so you don't have to disassemble everything and do it. You can just use a paper clip. I wouldn't use a pen, just you don't want to make a mess. A little thing like this works fine, but there you go. So yes, again, up top, we are using MX switches, and it makes these guys stand up a bit tall. Now, I didn't find that a problem, but those who like pianoing might find it a little annoying. And if you have large hands, I certainly don't. This may not be the fit for you. But I did go ahead, you'll notice these are all yellow and not silver. Well, I went ahead and replaced them with UT4X's RGB versions because I like that tactile feel and I can't stop myself from breaking stuff. And I'm going to show you how to change switches here in internals in a little bit. But the ability to change switches to so many varieties out there, I think is a huge plus for this guy. A lot of their other models are using the Kale Chalk V2s, which are fine, but I like the variety. You know, I just want to play around with different combinations. And we'll get more into that as things go on. I just want to do a quick overview and introduce you to the G16. Let's take a look at the dimensions of the G16. So across, we are looking at about 7 3/4 inches, or about 195-ish millimeters. And vertically, we're looking about 5 inches even, maybe just shy of it, or about 125-ish millimeters. So width-wise, we are looking at, I'd say, about just shy of an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch, or about 23, 25-ish millimeters, including the buttons. So, yep, this guy is super compact, pretty lightweight, but it still has a good substance to it, just because of the acrylic. So, we'll see how the actual weight fares. Let's check the weight of the G16. It's a full pound and a little bit extra. I'm actually a little surprised this little guy actually weighs over a pound. For the size, I feel like it's a good weight for it, so there you go. Still remains ultra portable. It's time to do a quick Steam Deck check with the G16. So as you can see, yep, it moves around very nicely, and we'll go ahead and load the game. Now, I always like to measure a minimalist setup so we can see just how compact we can make this for your travel needs. And I'd say you need about 7.5 inches deep. And of course, the Steam Deck is really the limiting factor width-wise at about 11.5, 12 inches. So let's see if it moves around in-game. And yes, I'm using a right angle adapter, so there is that consideration. And you will need a C-to-C cable, unless you have like a USB hub or something like that. So just be aware that's not included in the package. But yes, again, moves around beautifully in-game. If you have problems, I would say change it to X input, and you should be fine. But otherwise, the G16 passes the Steam Deck check, so let's move on. Let's go over the internals of the G16. So starting with the top here, these keycaps easily removable, and I'm a little worried that in a bag or something that they were unprotected in, these come off and rattle around, hopefully not get lost. So I do recommend, and they go on really easily, you have a tablet sleeve like this, and this is a G-Form Hydro Extreme. They don't really make them anymore. However, I think on eBay there are alternate G-Form cases that I like these a lot. They have a nice feel to them, and they're very protective. So take a look there. You might find something you like, or if you have a tablet sleeve already, and make use of it. This way, you know, if these get peeled off somehow while in your little tablet case, they're not going anywhere. Plus, it'll help protect it a little bit more. Now, if you're not a fan of these clear buttons, you can always get, and these are on AliExpress and maybe other places, these little, what I call stovetop swirl ones. So they come in a variety of colors that you can use. Anyway, let's go ahead and move back to our factory stock. The other thing you can do, and because they're included, are these little rubber nubs. It reminds me of the old laptop track point devices. Let's say I want to change this guy. I'll make that one black. There we go. And turbo, I want red because that's not a button I should be touching in competition. So there we go. And definitely save these little guys somewhere in case you lose one or two. I don't know if you can get replacements. Haute42 may be able to help you out, but I can't guarantee it. Anyway, let's move to the back. We're going to go ahead and open this up. Now, the way this is secured is there are 6 sets of these. So this little pin that goes up top and is smooth, and a retaining screw on the back. I want to say this is like a M2 maybe? I'm not sure. Anyway, so to remove it, I just put a finger on here to hold it in place while you just use a precision screwdriver. I think this is a PH0, and there we go, it'll slot right out. And you'll immediately notice this mat cover comes off, and this will come off as well, so just make sure you keep track of your layers. And with that off, you can actually tell where the pins are. It's very hard to see with that matte layer there. Might be nice to have a clear layer instead. But anyhow, let's go ahead and carefully pull this up. So this is your main layer. It's very thick. And from here, we should be able to change switches. Most of the rest of this does not want to come undone. I think it may be glued together, and I'm a little worried to try and take it apart. The retaining layer, you can see me peeling it just a little bit for this, so the switches kind of hang on that as well. Now I tried the included switch puller, and I just never had much luck with it. It's kind of not that great. So if you have a switch puller, you might want to make use of that. Anyway, let's go ahead and change this guy. And I'll admit, I tried to do this earlier. I've already done these as mentioned, and sometimes just removing these guys are stuck in there pretty good. Even a switch puller just does not have much luck. So I can try again, since I did swap this one before. Yeah, I'm not having much luck again. So this tends to get little cracks. You can see one here perhaps.
I've got one there. I mean, they're not bad, and they can be covered up pretty easily with the artwork, so I'm not super concerned about it, but just something to not panic about, hopefully. Anyway, the alternative is just take your screwdriver and push kind of somewhat firmly on there, especially for ones you haven't removed yet. And I'm going to use these U4T switches. So you just want to line up these pins with that. And if you're going to use replacement switches like this is the U4TX RGB. And there you go, they're in. Just make sure all the pins line up and you should be good to go. Then it's a matter of just reassembling that on top. This there, and then on the bottom, we want our key switch layer. Make sure this lines up there, and here you go. And then it's just reinsert our retention pins. And I'd start with, as I usually advise, start with one corner. Make sure it goes through. One screw. And then just screw it down. There's really not too much else to the internals. And don't always tighten that down immediately, just because we want to make sure every other hole lines up. From there, you just come over here, then you can go here, then here, then here, then here. Now, one other feature I didn't point out quite yet is right here. This is a very smart thing, and it looks, why is there a hole there, right? This is so you can use a small object like a paper clip or something like that, and that is your boot select button. So if you update the BIOS and then suddenly, oh no, nothing works, or I misconfigured things, you can use this, upload the flash nuke, and then re-upload the Pico firmware, and you should be set to go. I want to give you guys some quick other notes when you're changing switches, if you're going to change switches. Beware this layer on the top, kind of switch retention layer. It tends to flex up when you are popping out these switches, especially on the edges. So just make sure you squeeze that down. And watch out for fingerprints. You don't want to leave a mess here before you button things back up. So you can clean those up with our trusty microfiber towel and a little lens cleaner. Glass cleaner can work in a pinch. But I recommend the lens cleaner. It works pretty well. So if you are changing switches, you may just want to leave them out until you have this ready. And of course, if you want to avoid that altogether, if you have some like nitrile gloves, something like that, that will avoid this mess altogether. And yeah, I'm a little squeaky here. Anyway, just make sure it's nice and clean before you button it back up, otherwise you're not going to have a good day.
Let's do some basic acceptance testing for the G16. Now I'm going to do some pressure test real fast just to see. A little weird pressing up kind of over the screen, it doesn't really hit it, but it actually does not affect it, so that's good. Okay. Otherwise, yeah, acrylic sandwich, I don't notice any deforming or anything like that, so that's really good. Now sliding this around, yes, I knew it would, no resistance at all. I was surprised the screw heads are not digging in my foam. They might dig into certain surfaces though. Oh yeah, I can feel it now. If you can hear that, that's less the acrylic hitting the table and more just these screw heads. So I would be very careful about putting this on any important, expensive table and moving it around much, because that'll scratch. I'm going to put the little rubber nubs on so we can see how it does with those. Okay, I've attached the little rubber nubs, and yes, there's definite a drastic difference in slidability here. This is, yeah, it'll slide on the foam, and I always expect things to, so not really a big deal. But on the bare table here, it's definite improvement. So I'm giving it some, fairly considerable force, not, a huge amount, just like having a good bump. and you can see it's resisting pretty well. So they're effective enough. You may consider grip tape as long as it's thick enough. You need to be thicker than the little screws on the bottom. Otherwise, they're just going to make contact and not your grip tape. Okay, so just a note. One, I do still have the U4TXs in here that I put in. The silvers, kind of test those in the Mini, and they're an okay switch, but I wanted to upgrade this as soon as I got it, of course. And you'll notice that I have these spiral button caps on, and so these are the low profile. They're all over AliExpress, and this came up on the Haute42 Discord. Hey, which caps work if I want to replace these? These low profile ones work on the G16, the T16, and the upcoming M16, and the variants thereof. So M series, T series, G series, and yeah, you see the little spiral design. They sit a tiny bit lower than the stock caps. Nothing really noticeable though. You can get these in various colors. I went with black here just because I want to keep kind of a consistent LED color. And yeah, they are a little bit narrower than the stock caps, and they have a texture on top, a little matte texture, which is nice. This is a gamer finger cap and will only work on the G16 and the other G series. You'll notice that it transmits a lot less light, and it sits about 1 millimeter higher than the others. So I'm just doing this for demonstration. Folks were asking on there, hey, does it work with these caps? Which one should I get if I want to replace the stock ones? On the G16, both these types work, so there's that. Let's do some basic acceptance testing. Now, it's actually getting 4 confirmations here. We can see it in Hardware Tester and in George CPL, and via the LEDs and the screen that these are all working. Now, when you press this up right now, and I believe this will be fixed in future firmware revisions, you're lighting up this guy because they're both tied to up. And that may have something to do with the switch here, but anyway. All these should work fine. Yep. And this is going to light this guy up because this is seen as the primary left stick. This is lighting up as right stick. And curiously, if you hit, I believe, where are you hiding? Touchpad. Yeah, that'll light up. Just an oddity. And if you hit home, and hopefully I don't go into big picture mode and screw this up, you're lighting up over here. And again, I believe this should be fixed in the future. So there's that. Otherwise, let's go ahead and make sure everything's good. Yep, we're all good here. Double tap, double tap, double tap. This is working. I'm in last one mode, so I should expect, to do that. So directionals look good. All right, L3, R3, press them both. Yep, they're all good. Let's do some tapping around. Okay, and let's do some button chords. All that works. Mash them together, looks good. Triple, hold. Let's do a turbo test. Oh, there we go. Yep, that works fine. Okay. Now I'm going to do some mash test. It's doable. I can feel the buttons on the sides kind of hit my fingers a little bit, but it's not slowing me down really. So it works reasonably well. I don't know if it'd be the optimal for what people like. Just try some mess around. Yeah, I think everything here passes pretty well, so we can move on.
Let's do a little training mode with the G16. So just moving around, feels pretty good. I mean, since I played on the T16 as well, I can definitely notice there is a bit more height to these buttons, but is it really hurting me? Is it ergonomically wrong? Not really, it's just a difference. I was just using the T16 a little bit, so I can definitely notice the difference. Nice thing, yeah, Let me just do my last win shenanigans. There we go. Obviously not CPT rule set compatible. You have to be in that neutral mode, but when I'm just being a scrub like this, it doesn't really matter. Anyhow, let's try turbo in game. Yeah, there you go. Just sliding. Feels like there's a little bit of catch, but nothing that's really slowing me down. I have seen people on the Haute42 Discord complaining about these caps popping off, but that hasn't really happened to me, and I wonder if maybe it's because I switched out the switches to the U4TXs. But they do have a pretty similar profile as far as stem, so I don't know if that would really be it. Anyway, doing charge motions, doing other motions, I mean, it feels pretty good. There's no problems there as long as you're ready for, all button box. Boom. And again, having these mapped is really easy. You can just be doing your thing. They try and throw it out. There you go. You've countered them. So it's really easy to access. Now I will say my hands are kind of small. If you have larger hands, I have heard people complaining about I tried something like the Sally box, and those have small buttons like this. It wasn't for them. They had to sell it. So if you have larger hands, I mean, just for comparison, here's mine. This may not be for you. You might want to look at the M16 or the T16. So otherwise, I'm really happy with this. I really like the portability. It's not as comfortable on the lap, of course, but we'll address that later. I mean, whenever you trade down size, you kind of give up some lap comfort, unless you put out, a lap desk or something to put this on top of. But otherwise, this being something you can just throw in almost any bag out there and be ready to play wherever you want, that's fantastic. And I love being able to change the switches out. If you have complaints about the height of the buttons here, yeah, that's the only kind of gotcha if that's something you don't like. So overall, I'm really happy with it, but there might be little things, and we'll talk about that in pros cons. All right, I'd like to do a quick web audit for the G16 just to make sure the claims out there are good. The experience of finding information on it is also good. So we'll start. I'm in a private tab just to make sure no algorithm, using DuckDuckGo and kind of help with that. So let's see what happens when we search for G16. And right away we come to the G series. First link, that's excellent. Usually if it's within the first 5 links, I give it a pass. It's a first, it's like an A+, so very good. All right, and got a nice website here. The input latency under 1 ms, I mean, it's technically true in certain situations. I'm inclined to let it pass. It's not like claiming PS5 compatibility when it means PS4 compatibility on PS or Legacy, whatever, that kind of sneaky stuff. Okay, that's true. It has all of that. All right. That's fine. So the website, it's designed pretty well. Lets you see the product clearly. And then, it's nice. Has a button map here. I like that. Specs down here. Let's see. Well, the overclock polling rate for one, I feel like that's more when you overclock the USB ports on your computer more than anything. I don't know if that's the actual. Okay, I do know that GB2040 has achieved those sub 1 ms times on PC. Yep, this is all looking fine. Not going to complain. Now it does say PS4, and yes, it technically has that, but you do need to do either the pass-through or the file installation on it. So let's see support. I do like the instructions for firmware update here. And yeah, okay, there's a whole tutorial on how to get PS4 configured, so with some links on how you can get the software you need. So all in all, I don't have anything to complain about here. There's maybe little bothers, but not really.
I think everything's good. All right, let's move on.
Now that we're back from the lab, I want to talk about what I liked, what some neutral observations, and what we can improve on in the next generation of OPAD. So first of all, I've already said it, I really like the build on this. Acrylic sandwich setup it always has good weight and feels nice and solid, doesn't flex or anything like that. Doesn't feel like you're going to break it just by dropping it, though. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it could chip and such. And yes, of course, it is acrylic, so you may leave smudges and fingerprints and stuff that you can clean up. But overall, I do like the weight to it, even at this subcompact size. It feels like it still has a little bit of presence, a little bit of heft. It just feels nice. Another thing with the build quality on it is just a little things like having 2 USB ports, so playing from the front works for you. That's great. If you want to use the side, that's great too. Also, I really like this innovation of having the little boot pinhole. So if you need to kind of do that emergency reset, you can without having to disassemble the entire unit, which is really nice. Also, I've already mentioned that there's removable keycaps and switches, so you have plenty of customization there. And because it's using MX switches, once again, you can change those out, but I'll get into that in a little bit. The second thing I liked about the G16 was the amount of innovations that were here. And I know none of these are really new to fight sticks, but they're relatively different. So starting off, I mean, obviously we have the extra L3 and R3 buttons placed up here, so you can assign them to drive impact or some other in-game macro and just execute them really quickly without having to reach very far back to here or something like that. So that's nice. You have the LCD screen for status, you have removable key switches. I like all of that, and LEDs for everything. That's always fun. And so on. So that's really nice. And having the added pass-through that lets you play on PS5 is kind of future-proofing in a way, so that's really nice too. So overall, it's kind of going with the build quality, but I really do like the innovations here, even though they're not all new. I mean, the extra buttons are kind of a Rufelmonger thing, right? And LEDs are nothing new, but they're well done. Having multiple USB ports is something I've seen others have, but to have it all in one package, I feel is a real nice deal. Something else that's a pro here is that, yes, you can customize your G16 with an art template. You do have to take it apart, and again, recommend wearing gloves so you don't get a bunch of stuff in there, and make sure you don't leave any cat hair like it was everywhere in my house. Anyhow, there are some caveats to that, and I'll get to that in a second. However, you can also change out these keycaps for some of those stovetop ones, I like to call them. They're all over AliExpress, and you can get them in a variety of colors. So if you don't care for the all clear on clear scheme, you can definitely change all that. Now that said, I really wish there, and hopefully in the future there will be, some focus attack integration. So you can download their template, put in all the art you want, upload it, pay a fee, and they'll print it, cut it, and send it back to you. And they do really marvelous job with that. I've used them for my AFS sticks for years. And if we have that availability instead of having to try and go through with an X-Acto knife, especially with all these buttons, that's rough. I know I've tried cutting with that, and it's just not optimal. I know there are other tools, of course. But at least there is the option to, again, replace the caps and insert art of your choosing. The next pro I have for this is, again, kind of tied to the build, but it's also the subcompact size. I mean, look at this guy next to my head, and you can see that it goes about anywhere. I've already shown you I can fit it into a 7-inch size tablet case, and it fits just snugly. I can throw that in a small sling bag, and I can take that to my local game center or wherever I want to go. So It's spectacular just for taking on the road. It's weighty enough to feel good while you're playing, but light enough to not weigh you down during the day. So if I took this to a convention or something, or some gaming event, and I don't feel like lugging around one of my big sticks, well, this is perfect for that. Yes, and I'll talk about this later, the lap play is not as good, but I still feel like the controller you have is better than the controller you don't have. So if I'm able to take this with me and have something versus not, then yeah, that's better. So I really do like and appreciate the subcompact size. The next pro I'd like to mention is the use of full-size MX keycaps. Now I know we could save a little bit of vertical space with whatever by using low profile stuff, but the problem with low profile switches is that there's no set standard. So if you have a board that's manufactured for, say, Chalk V1s, you can't even use Chalk V2s, you can't use cherry switches, you can't use whatever other low profile switches are out there because they are all different. And it's kind of maddening that this is so. I really wish there was a standard like the Cherry MX kind of clone market. And that also opens up just so many options for you. So there's practically thousands of manufacturers, it seems, out there. And pretty much one of the first things I wanted to do was change my switches. I'm not a huge linear guy. On a all button controller, it's fine, but I did want that slight bit of tactile feedback. So I did change to the U4TXs almost immediately. And you saw earlier how to do it. So that said, yeah, I know this increases the width, and we'll talk about kind of the flip side to this in a bit, but I really do appreciate the decision to go with full-size MX switches. All right, y'all know I'm a stickler for documentation. It's just kind of one of my job responsibilities in the real world, so I'm going to carry it over here. And it just raises your confidence in a product, I feel. So having that printed documentation included with the product was very nice. Having a dedicated website, also very nice. And there's also a Discord server for you. So if you are into that, you can go there. And there's also stuff here. You can ask Haute42 questions directly and so on. So that's also very nice. Now, I will mention that the website did not seem to have the art templates. I had to go to Discord for that. So that's a minor fix, I feel, that these templates should be in the support section for these products, and that way you can just get them from there instead of having to join Discord, search for them, etc. Another thing I liked about the G16, I've mentioned it before, but perhaps you are new to hitbox style or all button controllers in general and you don't feel confident yet. And I can totally get it. When I started, my first button controller had a lever on it, so I built those with everything on it, and it takes time to learn, and it can feel pretty frustrating while you do. So with the G16, you can start, okay, this is jump, that feels weird, but as a kind of comfort thing, you can just jump right back to here, no pun intended, and you can keep in the game for a while until you get more comfortable using the up arrow by your thumb instead of here. Or maybe you do both or something like that. It really depends on your playstyle. But I feel having the Mixbox combined with hitbox style just makes it a much easier transition to an all button controller than just saying, hey, here's your hitbox layout, good luck. All right, I've talked about what I liked. Let's go into kind of the mids here. So the first thing I think people might have their eye drawn to when they see the G16, besides that it has all these buttons, is, well, how high these buttons sit. So if you're looking here, I'm just going to give the vertical view. These sit kind of high up off the board, and you might think, that's a problem. If I want to mash, I might get my fingers stuck or something like that. When in reality, if you just do this, you're just fine. But there are those of you out there, and I totally get it, that you don't want keycaps sticking up way off the board like this seems to. And I did not find it to be a hindrance to me. Like I said, mashing, if you want to do that, you can just kind of rub your hand over the top and press down slightly, and it works fine. But, it just might feel awkward. It might feel not right. And I totally understand. So it is something to be aware of going into this. So just be observant of that. Another thing to watch for on this, not necessarily a pro or a con, is yes, this is a subcompact box and I love it for that. However, for those of you with much larger hands than mine, I've got tiny ones for whatever reason, this might not be the controller for you. Just because, yeah, this is a small little baby, and if you have hands twice the size of mine, this is not going to be for you. You'll probably be better off with, say, the T16, which has more full-size buttons. Otherwise, if small buttons are not a problem for you, then yeah, keep it in the running for a controller you might want to look into. Next on the list of observations, kind of not pro, not con, is this is another acrylic sandwich product, so that means it's going to pick up the acrylic smudges and fingerprint stuff that you're just going to have. And I know normally I'd list that as a con, but since that affects every acrylic equipped product, it felt unfair, so that's why I'm moving it to observations for a lot of these. And there's two factors that kind of mitigate it as well here. One is because you have this white PCB, I think it's harder to see. So there's that. And two, it's really easy to clean. Just use the old microfiber towel, and if you really need to, you get out the lens spray, and there you go. Just spray your towel. I wouldn't recommend spraying the thing just to make sure it doesn't get inside, and then wipe it down. There you go. One more mid kind of thing I want to mention is there's no real opportunity to accessorize when you're ordering from their store on, say, AliExpress or whatnot. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's pretty simple. I'm just looking for something like what SGF offers. So if I'm buying a Faust, right there on the page, yes, I can customize my colors and the buttons, but I can also say, yes, I want a cable, yes, I want a sleeve, yes, I want the extra foot pedals, yes, I want a Magic Boots adapter. And it'd be pretty easy to offer some selections after the fact, or offer a big bundle with all these things, and that way you can offer more value and make a little bit more money. Now this next thing is kind of unfair, so I'm putting in observations. Granted, whenever you shrink things down to this size, it makes lap play a little bit tenuous, right? You're just gonna have to squeeze together, at least I do, if I don't lean back further or do something or other to make that more palatable. It's still very lap playable. It's got just enough size for that. However, it might be a little uncomfortable compared to something wider. That's just something to watch out for, more or less. Anything this size is going to share that weakness. Okay, I've told you a lot of stuff that I really liked, and on the whole, I really do like this controller. I've told you about some things to watch out for, but what about the negatives? There's got to be something that's wrong with this, right? I mean, especially at this price, there's no way it can be that perfect. Well, there are a few things that I've already pointed out, but also just a few other things that kind of I didn't like. And let's go over them. So the first thing I'd probably have to mention is trying to change switches the first time was a challenge. Yeah, I mean, I would have to go from the underside, push right on there, and it resulted in little cracks in one of the layers of acrylic, and that's not very confidence inspiring. So I think they're just being inserted way too firmly at the factory or something like that that's causing this. I'm not really sure. It should be just a little bit easier to remove those, and it's just not, and it's causing issues. So I don't know if the little acrylic sheet down here that's kind of locking those in needs to be looser or what. I kind of get that it does need to lock down, because otherwise it'd be pretty easy to pull these out. However, the tolerance, it seems to be a little too tight, and it is causing cracking when I try and replace those switches. So there needs to be a solution there. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but there you go. Next on my list of things I'd like to improve upon is the included accessories are a bit meh. I mean, the switch puller is not good, and the USB cable included is not great. I mean, I understand you want a basic sort of thing in there, so okay, I'm not complaining that hard about them. It's not like I don't have 50 USB-C cables lying around, but the included one I would replace as soon as possible, which is kind of why I suggested in the kind of mids that if we could offer an upgraded USB-C cable, something that's braided, a little longer, that would be nice. The little rubber feet are fine. The replacement caps are fine. Having an extra switch is actually a very thoughtful touch. I really like that. It's just those two that I was like, no. So that's all. One minor gripe I have is, it's something I mentioned before, but the frosted acrylic on the back, it looks nice, but however, it makes it really hard to read what pin each of these are. So really what you want to do is just disassemble it once, take a picture of all the pin settings, or at least write them down, or what have you, and then you should be set to go for later. But as it is, if you wanted to be able to read it through this, I can't do it even with my reader glasses on. It just does not want to work. Either the type is too small, or you just can't see it through the kind of frosted matte acrylic there. It's a minor thing, I know, but it is something. One little thing I'm going to gripe about is, well, it seems that the G16 uses just a modified variant of the G12 or other G series boards, because if you look, there's a little fit and finish issue where LS and RS are still up top here. However, they're obviously not present because they've been moved to these buttons. And all the buttons, at least in the hitbox layout, have a silver outline, but not here, 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 here. And you can kind of alleviate that with an art install, so you won't notice it at all. But as it is by default, those things are just either there when they shouldn't be, or they're not there and should be. So it's a fit and finish thing. It's not going to affect your gameplay, but there it is. All right, we do have to address the accusations that you are going to violate every CPT rule if you use this controller. And yes, some tournament organizers and rule sets might have you not be able to use this controller for whatever reason. However, there's some workarounds for that, and let's talk about it. So first, you do have the right to have L3 and R3. It's available on other controllers, so it should be available to you. It's mostly that you would probably just have to remove the switches and keycaps there, so they can't be used at all. That would make this not have two ups and not have two L3s, so you would be tournament legal at that point in most any case I can think of. There's no rules that I've seen, CPT or otherwise, that disallow you from having L3 and R3 accessible. So you're good to go there. It's time to wrap things up on the G16. We're going to ask the usual two questions. Who is this for? Who is it not for? And give you some final TLDR thoughts. All right, I like to always start with the negative so we can end more on a positive note. And so who is this not for? Wow, it's really hard for me to think of a lot of use cases. I have already mentioned that if you have larger hands, this is not going to be for you. It might be uncomfortable because this is a smaller controller, has smaller caps on it, and that might be off-putting to some of you. And I've seen people with other controllers that are similar, like the Sallybox Plus, that have said, hey, my large hands don't fit to this thing, it's just not comfortable to play. So there's that. Also, as in terms of comfort, if lap play, you really need super solid, comfortable lap play all the time, no exceptions, then yeah, this is, again, it's a portable controller, that's small form factor, all that stuff, so you can take it anywhere, throw it in about any bag. But yeah, whenever you do that, you lose a little bit of lap playability. It's just gotta squeeze those legs together, at least for me, or find some other way to balance it. Otherwise, yeah, I don't have a lot of bad things to say about it. Okay, like I said about the T16, I feel like there's not a lot of cases against using the G16 and a lot for. It's just a really well all-around controller. It's a fantastic introduction to button boxes because, again, if you're still getting used to it, you can use the WASD, and that can be more comfortable, while you get the thumb memory for the up button on the bottom, right? For advanced users, again, you have the extra R3, L3 buttons, so you can map those to in-game hotkeys, once again, and there you go. You also have the pass-through. You have 2 connections for USB-C. I don't know why the T16 didn't have this. That would have been nice, just so I can side mount a angle cable, whatever. The built-in status screen. You have LEDs. It's a nice thin, small package. It's really great. Now I don't think any of these are particularly innovative on their own. They've been done by other controllers, but I don't know if they've really been done as a whole package deal as has been done here. So just sometimes bundling everything together, it's just sometimes my philosophy on things. It works, and it was done really well here. I can totally wholeheartedly recommend this controller. Alright, so what are my TLDR final thoughts on the G16? I'm kind of given some of those already, right? I really like this controller. I really like the customization you can do. Yes, you can get artwork done. I haven't done it yet. You can customize the switches with thousands of them out there. See which one works for you. I again went with the U4TXs, and those have been performing pretty well. I like them. Yeah, the caps sit higher than, say, the T16 or now the M16 and the S16, which is out. If you want a version of the G16 without the really high caps with a lower profile, that's what the S16 is all about, so you can check that out now. Obviously not reviewing that in this video, it's long enough. But if you prefer to have the option to customize these, then you go with the G16. And I felt like playing on the G16 was just fine. I do like either style. So if I go to the T16 and then go to the G16, it's like, why does it sit so high? And then I go from G16 over to the T16, it's, what the heck? It got lower and it feels weird. So it's just really what you practice with. I didn't feel like my fingers were getting caught or anything. So that's all good. The fact that this fits in a 7-inch little tablet case makes me happy. It's just so lovely and portable. I feel like I'm gushing about this a lot, and it's pretty well deserved. I'm liking this little guy. It's definitely going to go with me on a few trips, and yeah, it's just been a blast to review. So thank you, Haute42, and let's move on. Alright, let's do a quick overview of the Haute Board Mini. So let's start with the accessories. You do get a little screwdriver for taking it apart if you need to. This key switch puller, which is, yeah, it's not great. I would definitely want to use a better one. You do have a key cap puller, which is kind of a standard one. I didn't find any problems with removing the keycaps, but there you go. You do have some clear rubber feet included, so that's nice. You do have some little rubber, and these are going to be impossible to see, replacement caps. Now, the ones you'll have, I already changed mine. As you can see, I have a red and clear here just to denote those, because turbo ban in competitive play. So they'll all be black when you get yours. I just changed mine. You do get an extra one of these Leopold silver linear switches, which is a very nice touch. In case you have one go out, one arrives not working, you can just swap this in and you're off to the races. And you do get, it's an okay USB A to C cable. It is USB 2, which I expect. Otherwise, nothing too much to write home about there. And I get it for the price point. You're not going to get an elaborate USB 3.1 braided cable or anything like that. So that said, let's move on to the controller itself. All right, let's take a peek down here, and yep, you can see this is a very, very tiny boy. Here are my hands, just for reference, and yep, there it is. This is my precision screwdriver. This thing is tiny. It is the smallest controller I've reviewed here so far. Anyway, So you do have 6 option buttons, which is nice. Turbo, home, back, start, LSRS, and the nice thing is they're all labeled. Now I know in GP2040 you could go back and completely reassign these, which would invalidate those labels. I get it, but I think by default having them labeled is nice. Now the thing is, we don't have an acrylic layer on top, though this is an acrylic sandwich board. So changing the artwork on this might be a bit of a challenge, I'll just say. If we could get, I think you'd have to have another acrylic layer and bolt it on top and have longer screws here, these little retainer screws. Anyway, it is a mix box layout. Here's how it sounds on a table. Here's how it sounds in the air, just to be fair. Yeah, they're linear, so there's really no resistance or anything like that. I'm more of a tactile fan or clicky, so I might change them later, who knows. Keycaps are removable, and because these are MX, there's a whole wild world of replacement switches you could use, and there's no RGB on here, so you can use really any of them. You don't need a light pipe or anything like that to pass light through. Buttons, pretty much there you go. They're in a kind of different, like NOR-ish configuration. Now, in my experiments, trying to play like it was a controller, not the best experience. I mean, I guess I can kind of roll around thumb, but it did not feel as good as playing like so. Maybe it's just me. The way I always played old games with controllers was I would put the controller on something or on my lap and then just two-finger it, whatever. So there's pretty much up top, removable switches. It's lightweight, but it feels really solid. Not getting any flexing. If we look around, nothing here, nothing here. Fun stuff here, nothing here. Let's come back to this. This is your USB-C connection to connect to your console or PC. You have a pass-through port. So again, GP2040 now supporting PS4 and PS5 by using a little Magic Boots adapter. You just configure it inside the web config and plug that in. And now you should be able to play on PS5. All right. On the bottom, we have some kind of frosted acrylic, and one feature I do like is a little pinhole to press the boot button. So if you need to get in boot select mode, you screwed up your configuration, it's not loading, hold that down, plug it in, and you should be able to initiate nuke procedures. I just hope you have made a backup of all your settings, so good luck. Anyway, it does have labeling for input modes, but it's kind of hard to see if there's labeling for pins through this frosty acrylic. We'll have to see in internals if it has that. These are otherwise held together with Phillips screws, so now this is too small, but anyway, that included screwdriver, you could probably remove it, and we'll be doing that later. All right, so that's pretty much the overview of the Haute Board Mini. Let's get into measurements and more. Let's go ahead and get the measurements on the Haute Board Mini. So, just horizontally, we're looking at about 6 1/4 inches there, and vertically, we are at about, let's see, just shy of 3 inches or so, and about, let's say 75 millimeters or thereabouts. Now the thickness on it by itself is pretty thin, just the acrylic layers. It's just shy of about 1/2 inch, but if you do include the keycaps, we're looking about just shy of 1 inch or thereabouts. So, yeah, which is another 25 millimeters. And just millimeter-wise for the acrylic only, that's dead even 10. So that's nice. And just to show you, I have a little 7-inch sleeve here, zips up, And this one actually fits the G16 pretty snugly. In here you can have this, a cable, your adapters, and it's pretty much a complete kit, and there you go, you're all stored up. Let's take a weight for the board mini. Yep, 6.5 ounces. You could ship this guy first class, basically, because it comes in the 12 ounces rule. Super lightweight for a small guy, totally expected, but it still feels pretty. It's not super lightweight. Like I know some of the Saturn replica controllers just feel even lighter than this, so this feels pretty good in the hands.
Let's do a quick Steam Deck check with the Mini. Now, just to show you that it works in the OS, we're moving around the menus, works just fine. So let's go ahead and load up a game here. Using my favorite Blade Arcus. Anyway, while we're doing that, let's go ahead and get the dimensions. And yes, this is probably the most compact setup you're going to get. So front to back, you're looking at about maybe 5.5 to 6 inches. And width-wise, it's the Steam Deck, so that's 11.5 or 12 inches or so. Really super compact if you need it to be. Now, I'm using a right angle adapter and a C2C cable, which are not included. So you need to supply that. But just to see if it works in-game. Yep, there we go. As usual, GP2040 works flawlessly on the Steam Deck, so I was never worried. I do want to recommend you boot this in X input mode if you have any issues. But otherwise, you can see the buttons work, the stick works, so we're all set to go. The Mini passes the Steam Deck check, so let's move on.
Let's take a look at the internals of the Haute42 Mini. And we're going to start from the top, as usual with these. First of all, there is an included keycap puller, and it's competent. Pulls it off pretty cleanly. But given that you can just really remove it with your fingers pretty easily, even something hard that's nested up against stuff like that, this is a little superfluous. But it's theirs. If you have something that's giving you a little bit more trouble, then that might be something you use. Now, this guy is ostensibly the switch puller, but it's not great. It's just usually a switch puller I'll push down and it's already on there, but you have to kind of squeeze this and it's just not going. Kind of like with the G16, these switches are pretty tight in there. I think I'm going to go and pop them out from the underside, if anything, at least for the first time. Hopefully we won't get any cracked acrylic or anything like that, but we'll see. For now, I'm just going to put this back on and call it good. Now, these rubber switches are removable. Let's pop off. We've got 2 clears. I want to differentiate. Let's say LS and RS. I kind of stole one from one of the others, so oh well. We'll just show you one, to be fair. Alright, so there you go. You can just ply it off again. I'm using a mini flathead. And just make sure not to scratch that acrylic. Just kind of push. These are just little rubber keycaps. There's nothing too exciting about them. But there you go. So there's the top side. Let's get set up for the underside, disassemble this properly. All right, we're on the other side. And again, highly recommend when you're going into these acrylic layers, you wear gloves. There's not too much reason to disassemble the Mini, but I did want to show a couple of the layers here. Again, it's an acrylic sandwich, and we'll see more as we go. You're going to need a Phillips 0 to take this apart. So just hold that flat side, and then so it doesn't rotate, of course, and then give it a good unscrewing. And you might disassemble it just to clean it out a little bit, so there's that. We have this guy. Now, in contrast to the other 2 units here, we don't have the pins labeled on each of these. It may not be as necessary, but it'd be nice to have. So I'm a little let down. There's just this kind of surround layer. We do, these are hot swap. You saw me remove one of the switches, so in case one ever breaks. Something that's interesting to me is it looks like the circuitry for putting in LEDs is sort of there. We just don't have the actual LED, but you can see traces where in a hole for where they would go. And these do have light pipes, so I'm wondering if there's going to be a newer version of this where it does have LEDs, or a different version, more enhanced, like a plus version. Otherwise, we have our pass-through USB just as before. There's nothing I removed that really does anything. And just trying to ply the rest of this off does not want to go. And I imagine I have to remove every switch for that to happen. And really, I don't think you're going to see much. The RP2040 chip is probably somewhere around in this vicinity on the other side. So yeah. Otherwise, there's nothing really too exciting to report as far as internals go. Since this is not really amenable to artwork, the opportunity there is not present. So unfortunately, what do you do? So otherwise, that's about as much teardown as I can do. Showing you how to take off a switch and taking off a couple of the rear panels here. But just a note, when you're reassembling this, as always, and I always store the bits in a nice tray. Start from one corner. If you've watched my videos enough, then start up here, then go here, here, then here, and don't tighten all the way down. Wait until you've got all of your screws lined up, and then you can tighten them down. And again, don't tighten, don't be super tight about it. It should be firm, but not going to break the acrylic firm, because that's not a good time for anyone. And also, just make sure you should feel it go in pretty smoothly. If the screw feels like it's fighting, it's at an angle, it's just not really going in, then stop, back it out, and make sure you straighten it out. You should have no problem getting it reassembled. There is another reason you may find you need to take this apart, and that is if your switch puller is just not doing the job, you cannot get that switch out. Some of these were wedged in a lot like the G16, very tightly, and the only way I could really get it was to force it out. Just press on the center pin. You can use this screwdriver. I suggest maybe a hex bit just to give you more even force. Alright, we got them all in, and it's not the optimal way, but it is doable. So anyway, I'm going to tighten those down, and then we'll take this to the lab.
Okay, we're now in the lab, so let's go ahead and do some of our standard tests. Now I'm just going to make sure we don't have any flexion, and yeah, acrylic sandwich, you're not really going to have that, so feels good there. When I do the slide though, the screw bottoms are kind of digging the foam pad, so I don't want to do too much. And I'll try the rubber feet in a second here, but yeah, without, it's just going to slide, and that's expected results. So the only reason you leave the rubber feet off is you just carry it around in a bag, and you don't want them to come off because of friction. So let me put them on and we'll retry that test. Okay, now they're all applied, as you can see, and on foam I don't expect to really help too much. Yeah, it's still going to slide, of course, but on flat desktop surface, yeah, we're definitely cutting back on the sliding, and it doesn't have these bottom screws scraping against my foam and other surfaces, so I definitely recommend you have something there, even if it's not the included ones. Some thicker grip tape might work. just something to keep it from sliding and grinding those screw caps against, you know, whatever surface you're playing on. Now that we have the pressure and slide tests out of the way, let's go ahead and do some basic acceptance. So, just trying out the basic pad here, directionals, and these are equipped with these standard switches, so they feel okay. I mean, they're linears, and I'm not usually a big fan of those. All those work. Let's go ahead and double tap these, triple tap. Oh, that's lighting up fine. What does it feel like to mash on it? It's okay. I mean, they're close enough together that your fingers aren't falling off, so that's fine. Trust our options. And I would hit home, but that's going to launch Steam Big Picture on me, so I don't want to do that. Anyway, turbo. Yep, turbo off. Okay, looks good. So everything's working just fine. It's more of a matter of me getting used to Mixbox WASD on the left than anything, since my thumb just wants to travel down here and hit a hitbox up. All right, let's go ahead and get it in game.
Well, let's do a little lab work with the Mini, and yeah, Ken, I'm always blown away by how small this is. This is one hand, I'm covering it completely, and my hands are tiny. Anyway, so if I slip on one stuff, it's partially because the Mixbox layout it never really agrees with me. Whoop. Anyway, so just to tap out some stuff. This all works fine. Forward, back, so we're good there. Up, jump. Yeah, it's just something I have to get used to, and it's not that I don't have WASD experience. I've played plenty of shooters, but in a fighting game, my thumb just wants to hit up for me. I've had so much hitbox experience in the last year and a half or so. I don't know. Anyway, just to try again. When I do just single finger sliding, I can feel, especially on the bottom row, this tends to get stuck a little bit. So you kind of have to consciously pull it up just slightly until I get that down. So I don't know if there's something that can be done to fix that. Maybe install some, I think it's Texi half height switches on these two. That way you can slide it right off. But that's kind of an extreme fix for a little problem like that. I don't know. You can, of course, replace these keycaps and the switches underneath, so that's great. And motions feel good. I haven't heard reports of anybody saying that all my keycaps keep sliding off or something like that, even though it's not the hardest thing to do to remove them. I would keep this in a little pouch, like the little tablet sleeve I've shown already, when you're traveling, just to make sure, even if it does come off, it stays contained. That's not good to hit. Anyway, get over there. So yeah, I mean, other than me not being used to Mixbox, this feels pretty good. Alright, just testing the turbo out, it works fine. Now, of course, playing this on lap, not the best proposition without something to supplement it with, like a little lap desk or something, because trying to fit this in the right spot can be a challenge. I'll try balancing on a leg sometimes. It's not great. Obviously, whenever we shrink things down, it makes lap play, commercially less desirable. But playing on a table like this is great. However, I keep trying to play like I was playing with a standard controller. It's not great. Like, I can do it kind of, but oh no, come on. Yeah, see, I'm having difficulty getting these out. Maybe I just need more practice, but it just doesn't feel good to me. And maybe if there were more layers of acrylic to make these a little bit more submerged, so my thumb didn't have to move so much, that would work. But on this setup, I'm trying to hold it like a standard handheld controller. It doesn't feel right. Maybe someone can make it work. I don't know. So anyway, there's some thoughts on the Mini from the lab, and let's move on. All right, I just want to do a quick web audit on the Mini. What I do is here is a few different tests. So first of all, I'm using a private browser just to make sure I don't have any algorithm influenced results. Okay, and if I search for Haute42 Mini, I'm getting their gaming site, so that's pretty good. It's in the first result, so I can't complain. All right, so we can go to, well, that was one of the first things. Ooh, M series. All right, if I scroll down here, yeah, so I got there with only a few clicks. That's pretty good. All right, and do we have any? All right, the input latency under 1 ms I feel is under certain circumstances, but it is technically true. So I'm good with that. Okay, we're just listing the web configuration. I do like this part here, just showing a visual indicator of how to set the left stick, D-pad, or right stick mode. It's more memorable to me. So I'd probably download this, save it to your phone or something in case you ever need to know it while you're out and about. SOCD settings, input mode's very nice. Though the input modes are printed on the bottom of the Mini, it's also nice to have it here too. Okay, and some web config stuff. Okay, and then how to do it. Yep. Mini cable. Okay, it's just telling you the good stuff here. And then just some specs. So, okay. Yeah, I don't have any complaints here. Let's see, support. All right. So it tells you kind of the short steps on how to update your firmware and which one to use. So that's great. Okay. This is something they'll probably have to update though every time there's a new release. So as long as they do that, that's okay. All right. Now there's a whole section on how to do this. Now they are not going to provide the files. Okay, so it's just telling you here's the files, but here's some links that might tell you, gives you some hints at least. So there's a lot of nice FAQs. This is pretty good. I'm liking what I'm seeing here. I don't really have anything to complain about. So let's get into what I liked and what we can improve upon on the Outboard Mini. The first thing I liked is there is some functional customization here, and I'll talk about the other customization later. But you can change out the key switches, albeit with a little bit of effort. These initial ones are wedged in there pretty good. Keycaps can also be replaced, so if, you don't like these kind of translucent black, you don't want to do a color scheme or something, you can have different colors for your light, medium, heavy, etc. That's available, so you can do that. There's tons of keycaps, tons of switches out there that you can use. So just keep that in mind if customization is important to you. This does have that sort of functional customization, maybe not appearance customization. One of the advantages of the Haute42 products is they all have that pass-through port. So you can plug in the Magic Boots 1.1 for PS4, PS5, or the Xbox One adapter, and there you go. Now you have a PS4, PS5 compatible product, and I feel like that's a really strategic decision because it's going to extend the life and extend the versatility of this controller, just like the other Haute42s. Now I know there are some earlier revisions of the Mini that don't have that, but most of the newer ones that are sold should have it. One thing on here that might seem small, but I find it's a nice addition, is the full set of option buttons. A lot of smaller controllers, even bigger ones, they just tend to offload those and say, well, we don't have room, but not in this case. So kudos to Haute42 for managing to integrate all 6 option buttons there. One thing that can be overlooked in controller evaluations is value, and Haute42 has some pretty aggressive pricing, the Mini being their most value-conscious option, I'd say. So you can get it about, well, for this much. Anyway, I feel like that's a great way to remove a barrier to entry when it comes to controllers, so you can try out a Mixbox to see if it's for you without spending a whole lot. Now, if you feel like a hitbox arrangement is going to be more for you, then yeah, you step up to something like the G16, and you're still not paying a lot. So Wow, pretty much a good package here, even with the Mini, if you feel like, WASD is the way you want to play. Okay, I know it seems like a minor thing, for something that most of you are just going to plug in and play and forget, but I feel like there's not only a set of good documentation that's included and is available on their website, but there's also now a growing Discord community for the Haute42 products. So that I feel is a great advantage for them. All right, now that I've gone over the high points, what we should definitely keep in the Mini, I want to talk about some not quite cons, not quite pros, just kind of the midpoints, right? They might be deal break for some, or might be totally irrelevant for you to consider. So the first thing I want to cover in mids is, well, there's kind of a universal law that, okay, you can make a controller smaller and more portable, and it's easy to carry around, like in the case of the Mini, but it doesn't play well in your lap or in certain areas. It's just too small, right? Whereas on the other hand, you can make a controller big, like the AFS 18-inch I tend to favor for my own builds. It's super comfortable for lap play, has a huge presence, feels like you can mash around all day. But if you want to travel with this thing, you better invest in some bodybuilding lessons, right? So the Mini falls squarely on that small side, and trying to lap play this guy, not my best idea. It just feels a little squirrely sometimes. Whereas something like even the G16, I can do fairly comfortably, not with the Mini, unfortunately. But if you need something super portable and you can throw it in your pocket along with a USB-C cable, then yeah, this fits the bill. So you kind of have to just balance those factors, and if a super portable controller is for you, then the Mini might fit the bill for you. Another in the sort of in-between tier is, well, Mixbox. If you like WASD playing, then yeah, this can work for you. For me, again, my thumb just wants to be on the up key, and there's no up key here. So unfortunately, Mixbox is just not my style. But if it's for you, then it's for you. And that's really what's more important. So again, I feel like if you haven't come to all button, hitbox style controllers, then the Mixbox is a comfortable intermediary. It's something you can, pretty much transition to immediately, especially if you've been playing on keyboard, and then, maybe later you go to a hitbox or something like that, or you stay on Mixbox. But for those of you who are thinking, Mixbox isn't for me, then obviously this controller isn't going to be for you. Let's talk about some wish list items. And the first one is, well, I'd like to bring over the RGB from the G16, the T16 into this product. The slots are there. We saw it in internals. They're just not populated. So I don't know if that means the electricals are there and you could solder them in yourself somehow. It'd be an interesting project for someone if they're very electrically and very handy with soldering and LEDs and such. But it'd be nice to have a deluxe model that had at least the LEDs, maybe a slightly larger model that would let us get a little space bar for Hitbox Up. I do believe they are actually looking to produce a kind of Mini Plus version, and maybe there's a picture here right now showing you what that may look like. So those are a couple of the wish list items I have for this controller. But I know we're kind of intruding on the world of the G16 at the same time, so there's that. Something I've noticed that at least one other company has done, SGF is really good at this, is they've allowed people to accessorize at checkout, right? So yeah, you do get some okay accessories, well, some are less okay than others. I'd like to see the ability to upgrade your USB cable, include a magic boots, maybe a carrying case, stuff like that to make you guys some more money, for one. Just the ability to buy a bundle, deluxe bundle or something like that to really improve the experience, I think, would be great. All right, I've gone through the highs and kind of the mids. What are things we can improve upon on the next iteration of the Mini? What did I just not like at all that's not just my subjective opinion? I'd say the first and foremost thing about the Mini that I couldn't really get over is just how high these keycaps are. So if you look carefully, you can kind of see how high they stick off the board. It would be nice if we could get these inside or something like that, because when I try and play this off like a regular controller, it's just hard to move between them because these are so tall, and I can kind of roll, but not very well. And of course, trying to play with your thumb on here is not recommended. Maybe I can, do a thumb support like this and, here, but trying to play like this, when I don't have a table to support my arms, not super comfortable. So, yeah, I'm not sure what the solution there is other than low-profile switches, low-profile keycaps, which I think would kind of lose the charm in the Mini, being able to replace the keycaps with something that's more fitting for you. Maybe the answer is a little bit more acrylic layers on top, and that way you can add an artwork layer. But I'm not sure how else to solve this without adding a lot of extra expense. I think the only other real, semi-gripe I have about the Mini is that it shares a weakness that the G16 and T16 do, is that the included accessories, at least the USB cable and the switch puller, are not great. I guess they're in there, and I can understand for the price points why they are the way they are. We're not getting a USB 3.1, super fast cable that's braided and all that stuff, and I understand that. And the switch puller is not terribly great, so yeah, I would just say if you're expecting the included switch puller to do the job, I would definitely shop for another a little bit higher quality one if you plan on changing the switches a lot. Yeah, you can undo the bottom panel and push them out from the bottom. That works, but it's not the greatest way. Now again, on that first time, I found that even my good switch puller would not do the job, and I just had to kind of jam a screwdriver through until it popped those switches. But I think on subsequent runs, you shouldn't have a problem inserting and changing switches. So earlier I mentioned that you have functional customization with the Mini, in that, yeah, you can change these keycaps, you can change the switches after a bit of effort, I would say. However, there's no acrylic layer for art, and that's something I would like to see in a deluxe model of the Mini. It would be just one more layer of acrylic that you can stick art underneath, and I think you could do a whole bunch of candy wrapper themes, fun-sized candy bars, and it would be ideal for this. Alright, let's close things out on the Mini with my usual 2 questions and some final TLDR thoughts. And as usual, those 2 questions are, who is this controller not for, and who is it for? So we're going to start with the negative, because I like to try and end on a positive where I can. Okay, so who is the Mini not for? Obviously, if you need something larger, you want to lap play this a lot, it's not the most comfortable experience trying to balance it on a leg or, whatever. It's not great. If you can play it on a table, it's fine. That'll be its most useful use case. Of course, if you have like a lap desk you can plop this on, then yeah, it'll be fine. But otherwise, it just never seems to blend when you're playing, right? It just never seems to go away and balance itself and not be something you have to constantly think about. At least for me. I don't know. And the fact that you can't really play it in your hand, it just makes it feel a little limited to where you can play it. You've got to have a table to really play it well, at least to me. I could not get my thumb to go fast enough around those buttons, really. It just didn't feel right. Usually when I play WASD, I'm playing, with my fingers here, not my thumb, so it felt awkward to do. If you don't like the feeling of, keyboard caps, you die hard for arcade button style, then yeah, this is not going to be for you either. It's just little things like that, no pun intended, haha, Mini. But yeah, so it's very kind of situation limited, even though, yes, you can take this around easily enough. You just got to remember a cable, of course. It's kind of limited as far as where you can actually place and play it very comfortably. Can't you play in that? Kind of. I just never felt good about doing it. Alright, so who else is the Mini Not for? I feel like if you enjoy the cool features that, say, the G16 and T16 have, like LEDs and the status screen and things like that, then this might be a pass as well, since you don't have those things. It's basically here's a sandwich. You've got keys to press them, and that's about it. There you don't get the extra R3 and L3. They're up here, but on the plus side, I guess this is tournament legal. All right, so who is the Mini for? Well, I feel that proposition is a little bit obvious. You need something that's as small as you can get while still being relatively comfortable, and you can play this on a number of different systems. With the Magic Boots adapters for PS4 or Xbox One, you can play on those, and they'll fit in that little slot, which is a great advantage for GP2040 based stuff. Or you can play out of the box with PC, Switch, etc. And there you go. It's nice and fully featured. You have all of the keys and a number of option buttons. You got 6. I feel pretty comfortable with that. Yeah, so there's a great option if you just need something that you can stuff in your pocket and go play games with. If you have a little bit more storage space, then something a little bit more comfortable, like the G16 and the T16, might be preferable. But again, if you just have a tiny bit of space, you want to make sure you have something, here you go. Another group I feel is going to be drawn to the Mini is those of you who really, just like the G16, you love Cherry MX switches, you have a big collection of them maybe, and you want to use them on a controller. Well, here you go. Very little investment, and you can do that. So you can see if the world of all button controllers is for you. And if you're comfortable with using arrow keys or WASD to play online or something already, then you're not changing a whole lot by going to this. And this is something that's portable. Once again, with the add-ons, plug it in with PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and there you go. So what are my final TLDR thoughts on the Mini? I think they're pretty obvious. I'm not a Mixbox fan, really. It just doesn't feel as good to me as Hitbox does. My thumb just, again, wants to hit that down button down here, which doesn't exist on here. So, however, if you do really need something that you can stuff in your pocket, in a glove box, just about anywhere, then the Mini will fit. It really will, where many other controllers just won't go. So that's a real big advantage. I mean, if you go with the controller you have, not with the controller you don't have, obviously. So if you've got at least the Mini, you might be able to play a little bit better than some loaner stick, right? That said, do I really find myself in that situation often? Not really. I'm usually decently prepared, so I don't worry about it too much. But I can see where, if you're looking to get into all button controllers and want to start off with something that's easy, maybe it's familiar to you because you're already using arrow keys or WASD, then you can start with this. And you can play it on a table and get used to doing some basic stuff, and maybe later you decide, okay, I'll spend a little bit more money to get something a little bit more lap playable or a little bit more fully featured, and there you go. You can determine whether or not this hobby is for you. All right, let's bring them all in for a final group shot, and I gotta do it. Who's my favorite child out of the group? Well, I think you all know that the Mini, is pulling up last place. Mixbox, not my style. It is not a bad controller by any means, but I'm much more of a Hitbox style person myself. So, who's it going to be between the G16 and the T16? Who is my favorite child? Oh no, here comes the M16 to be my favorite child. I love this guy. It has a lovely weight, and that metal is so premium. Feels really nice. Okay, that's unfair. I'll talk about this guy later, but M16, also a great controller. just a spoiler alert. There you go. But between these two, it's really a tough call for me because I like both. They're situationally very great. This guy is great on the road. This one feels great at home. I love the low profile aspect here, but I also like the switch customization aspect here. It's tough, it really is, but I think I have to go. I have to give the slight edge to T16 just because if I'm going to be playing at home, which I do a lot, and I want to kick back, throw this in the lap, it feels just so much better not to have to worry about, how tight I have to squeeze my legs or whatnot. This will play great on a table as well. Buttons are big, which is nice. Even though my hands are small, I still adapt to it just fine. So I do have to give that slight edge to the T16. Now that said, if I'm going on the road, I'm definitely going to take the G16 over this. It's just that much more portable, of course. So there it is. If you are kind of waffling between one of these or maybe the M, honestly, if the M was in this comparison, I pick this hands down. It just feels so premium. But if you're only looking between these two and you play more at home, you're not going many places, then the T16 is probably for you. But if you are planning on going, out to locals, your friends, whatever, then the G16 might be better for you.
The arcade stick.